Chicago, 1995. As the heat of June blanketed the city in stifling sheets of oppressive humidity, Eric Tamlin left the air-conditioned confines of the convention center that he had been held hostage in for the past 8 hours. Loosening his tie and rolling up his sleeves, Eric embraced the warmth and the smooth sounds of jazz streaming out of Millennium Park. Although he would have much preferred to have been attending the Chicago Blues Festival, he was in town on business. Very boring business. The streets were alive with locals and visitors alike. A celebratory atmosphere had fallen over the town as the lilting tones of rhythm and blues floated on the heavy air. Every eatery and bar was overflowing with guests. So Eric walked the mile back to his mid-range hotel for a mediocre meal at the hotel cafe bar. The food was, as expected, greasy, flavorless, and overpriced. But the bourbon hit the mark. You see, a maker's mark is a maker's mark wherever you order it. As Eric sat at the bar top, savoring the honey-colored spirit, an attractive middle-aged woman sidled up onto the stool next to him. Clad in a business formal but chic black dress and perfumed in heady notes of Dior, this woman screamed elegance and grace. Her short, inky hair was cropped artfully to her shoulders, and pearlescent fingernails tapped impatiently at the bar top. My God, service is slow here. I've been sitting over there for 15 minutes, and not a hello, would you like a drink, or how are you? I finally decided that if I came to sit at the bar, I might actually catch someone's attention. She had caught someone's attention. Eric's. You drink bourbon? He asked with a warm smile. I would drink anything at this point. I've been at an insufferable conference all day. Eric slid his maker's mark to the woman. As it sailed across the bar, he asked, The SEAL convention? I didn't see you there. No, the medical sales convention, she responded as she carefully stopped the sliding glass. You work with SEALs? Are you like a marine biologist or something? Not exactly. I work with plastic seals and rubber O-rings. You've been at a conference for plastic circles? Oh, honey, you need this more than me. She sent back the glass with a laugh. Finally, the bartender appeared, a young man in a cheap white dress shirt and baggy slacks. I'll have 2 whatever he's having. Make 'em doubles and stick 'em on my tab. Thanks, Eric nodded, as the 2 raised their glasses. To the SEALs, the woman proclaimed as they clinked glasses. So, medical sales, that sounds interesting. Eric had been divorced for a year. This was his first attempt at flirting in 25 years. He felt a sheen of sweat begin to blossom over his brow. But after a swift sip of Maker's, he felt his cool return. Interesting, huh? She replied with a giggle and raised eyebrows. Only if you find scalpels and heart rate monitors interesting. This was not going well. Shifting tactics, Eric asked, Okay then, what is interesting about you? A perfect ivory smile stretched across the woman's face. She really was a beauty. And now, he had her hooked. The pair spent the night sitting at the bar, entertaining each other with half-truths about their lives, the drinks flowing as liberally as the conversation. At last call, the bartender handed them both their respective bills. Eric had been charged for his fish and chips and 1 Maker's Mark. Hold up, Eric exclaimed, waving over the teen. This bill is incorrect. No, it's not, interrupted the woman. I got these, she said coolly and confidently. No way, that bill must be huge. Put on the company card, it's no big deal. she replied with a flippant wave of her hand. You can repay me by escorting me back to my room. The bartender gave Eric a knowing smile, as Eric felt his internal organs twist. Yes, this woman was intelligent, funny, and absolutely stunning. But Eric was content to leave this interaction at the bar. But then again, the least a gentleman could do would be to walk the lady to her door. An awkward elevator ride took the pair to the 6th floor. Together, they walked down the long corridor to the last room, the room nearest the stairs. As the woman fiddled in her bag for the room keys, Eric attempted to make a clumsy farewell. Thanks for the drinks and the company. It was a real pleasure to meet you. Why don't you come in for a nightcap? Oh, that's very generous, but I really shouldn't. I've got a flight to catch early in the morning. What about a cup of coffee? I've got one of those crappy hotel samples we could enjoy. Her affect, though warm and inviting, felt ominous. Whether it be lust, the bourbon, or the feeling of guilt for not picking up the tab, Eric followed the woman into the hotel room. Pain. Ice, cold pain flooded Eric's body as his eyes snapped open. Dreaming. He must be dreaming, for he was in a bathtub, naked, in agony, and covered in ice. Dazed and confused, he brought an icy hand to his face, rubbed his eyes vigorously as the ice cubes sloshed around him. As his eyes adjusted to the fluorescent light of the bulk standard hotel bathroom, he frantically searched for clues as to his condition. What did he remember? Not much. The woman gave him a cup of lukewarm, acrid-tasting coffee, and then nothing. As the ice sent shivers over his flesh and cramped his feet and legs, he realized a note tied to his left arm. It read, "Call 911. Use the phone next to you and call for help. You will be fine, but your left kidney has been removed, and you need medical attention now." In the 1990s, news reports of businessmen on trips waking up in bathtubs full of ice with surgery incisions on their backs swept across the USA. Although organ theft does happen, it typically occurs in hospitals, not Holiday Inns. But it's not medically impossible either. With the right set of skills and provisions, some doctors say you could remove the kidney and leave the patient, or victim, rather, relatively unharmed. Now, I, for one, know this story is true, because my friend's aunt's husband worked in the hotel that Eric and the mysterious medical saleswoman met in. He was the one pouring them endless drafts of bourbon. A painful reminder that we should be mindful of who is purchasing our drinks. This is it, my friends. The final episode of Season 5 of The West London Witch. While the main show will go on a summer break, The thrills and chills will be alive and well on our Patreon. I am delighted to announce the return of our annual summer reading program. This year, we will be diving into the infamous 1978 classic, The Amityville Horror. All summer long, I will be reading the book to you, cover to cover, from right here in Cobweb Cottage. Along the way, we will explore the controversies, dissect the facts, and uncover the horrors of 112 Ocean Avenue. So grab a festive drink, light a candle, and join us on Patreon. Let's spend this haunted summer together. Hello, and welcome to the Season 5 finale of The West London Witch, a podcast where we share stories about those moments where we find ourselves very much not alone. Although parting for the summer is such sweet sorrow, there is nothing like our annual gathering of the Midnight Society. If you were a kid in the 1990s and had access to Nickelodeon, you are well aware of the fear that washed over you as soon as the opening credits for Are You Afraid of the Dark began to roll onto the screen. As a kid, I loved this anthology of twisted and spooky tales. And as an adult, I look forward every year to our recreation of this iconic millennial moment. At the conclusion of every season of The West London Witch, we gather together to share our own collection of urban legends and hometown horror stories, terrifying tales to haunt you until the premiere of Season 6. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I'm Rebecca Strazina, and this is The West London Witch, Season 5 finale. I know it's true. A friend of a friend told me so. Part 5. Our first submission to the Midnight Society comes to us from the dark and dangerous streets of London town. The host from the Fairy Folk podcast has come to share with us the mystifying tale of a horrifying entity that plagued the streets of Victorian England. This is the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack.
I thought now would be the perfect time to introduce you to one of London's most notorious ghouls, the one and only Spring-Heeled Jack. The mysterious figure first sprung into action in the 1800s when a Peckham resident sent a letter to the Lord Mayor of London warning of a supernatural attacker that had been harassing women living in what were then the small villages surrounding London. Rumours of this mysterious phantom soon spread through press and public alike, prompting an onslaught of sightings and incidents of this tall, dark and cloaked figure who would attack mostly women with its long claws, sprinting or springing off into the night. The spring-heeled part of his name derived from his so-called superhuman powers, allowing him to leap over high walls to avoid being caught. One of the most famous sightings was reported in 1938, when a young woman named Jane Alsop claimed to have heard a loud ringing on the gate outside her home. After going out to investigate, she came across a mysterious cloaked man hanging out in the shadows. Assuming him to be a police officer, Jane listened to the man as he told her that he had captured the infamous Spring-Heeled Jack, inviting her to take a closer look. Following his instruction, she grabbed a candle and followed him into the shadows. Suddenly, the man shed his cloak and pulled her candle close to his chest. It was then that his true form was revealed. Miss Alsop was in fact face to face with Spring-Heeled Jack himself. With eyes like burning fireballs, he vomited out a terrifying stream of blue and white flames. Miss Alsop ran, but the demon caught up with her. He tore at her dress, hair and arms viciously with his metallic claws. It was only after Jane's sister came to her aid that she finally escaped the demon's clutches. The girls managed to scramble their way back inside, but Spring-Heeled Jack continued to try and barge his way in until the police were alerted to the scene. This harrowing ordeal was picked up by the press and soon became a matter of public interest. Who was Spring-Heeled Jack, and would he strike again? The police looked into the case, but they chose to ignore most of the supernatural elements, searching for a mortal perpetrator instead. But whilst the investigation into the Alsop case continued, Jack struck again. This time, frightening a servant not far from Bearbinder Lane, nowadays part of Tower Hamlets. This, it seemed, was just the beginning, as sightings of this Spring-Heeled character would continue to make appearances throughout the city. Not long after the previous incidents, a woman named Lucy Scales was accosted by the demon when walking in Limehouse with her sister. He then began to appear randomly throughout the 1800s, often popping up in locations across the UK. He was seen leaping over garden walls, his ability to do so becoming another of his famous calling cards, alongside the blinding blue flame. He returned to London in 1841, chasing women in Camden. Another London-based sighting claimed he had thrown fire into the road behind him as he fled a pursuing policeman. Jack's reign of terror continued as his hunting grounds expanded. But with the tales of his exploits heightened by the press, it became more difficult to distinguish what was a genuine sighting and what was the result of a potential mass hysteria. So, the question is, who or what was Spring-Heeled Jack? Was he a demon conjured up by those practicing the dark arts? Or was he a supernatural entity out to bring chaos and havoc to the people of Victorian London? One more skeptical suggestion is that Spring-Heeled Jack began as a prank by someone local to the London villages where the attacks first began. Or one or more of these attacks was carried out by a genuine attacker, with his sights set on innocent women. But as interest in the figure grew, several copycats sprung up. Either that, or the whole thing may just have been a fabrication of the minds of these young Victorians, spurred on by public panic and fueled by the media. For a while, it was thought that Spring-Heeled Jack was the invention of the Marquis of Waterford. He had a bad reputation for drunkenness and vandalism, having once literally painted the town red. However, sightings of Jack continued on after the Marquis's death. Perhaps he was just one of many who presented themselves as Spring-Heeled Jack. An anonymous letter claims that Spring-Heeled Jack was someone of high ranking who had accepted a bet to appear as a ghost, a bear, and a devil in the villages around London. This might explain the creature's sporadic sightings, but perhaps not his ability to spew fire and leap over 9-foot walls. And rather surprisingly, Jack's last official sighting was over in Liverpool. But we'll have to cover that one some other time.
Our next submission to the Midnight Society comes to us from Brianna, the face of the Paranormal Passport Instagram account. Brianna has brought us a haunting tale of a personal encounter that she had with a legendary spirit that haunts Florida's only remaining house of refuge. Although this safe house for sailors has been decommissioned for decades, that does not mean that it is uninhabited. This is the story of the House of Refuge. We arrived at the beach just in time for sunset, along the rugged, windswept stretch of Florida's east coast. The soft sand gave way to jagged rocks jutting out from the shoreline, and their dark shapes stark against the golden hues of the setting sun. The beach here feels wild and untouched in places where nature's raw beauty collides with the endless rhythm of the ocean. The air was thick with the scent of salt, and the deep, resounding force of the waves. It sounded like nature itself was holding its breath. We spread our blankets out on the soft sand, settling beneath the towering presence of Stewart's House of Refuge, the last remaining one on Florida's coast. This weathered, steadfast structure seems to rise organically from the coastline, and its silhouette etched sharply against the fading sky. The house had a quiet but haunting dignity, worn down by salt, by air, by time. Its sturdy shingle-peaked roof gave it a solid silhouette against the fading light, while the wide wraparound porch was supported by weathered beams that looked as if they'd withstood countless hurricanes and storms. The muted gray-green paint on its walls had faded, and they blended seamlessly with the coastal landscape, and the wood showing marks of the years battered by wind and by salt. As Martin County's oldest building, it offered sanctuary to shipwrecked passengers, standing guard over its turbulent waters from 1876 until 1945. In the 1950s, it was acquired by the county and transformed into a museum, not only a testament to the human survival, but to the lives lost at the unforgiving sea. Tales of this house were legendary amongst Florida locals. People spoke of disembodied cries on the wind, mysterious lights in the attic window, and most famously, a ghostly ship that appeared offshore, its blood-red gun ports glowing ominously in the night's mist. But it wasn't until that evening, on the beach, with the waves crashing and the light fading, that I finally understood the truth behind these local stories. The sun dipped lower, and it casted long shadows across the beach, darkening as the last of its amber hues faded from the sky. The gentle hum of the waves seemed to soften, and the air was growing heavier. With each moment, the house of refuge loomed above us. All of a sudden, a chill ran through me and my skin prickled. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and it pulled me to turn around, as if someone was watching me. I nudged my boyfriend, "Hey, turn around," just in time to see it too. There, in the small upstairs window in the attic of the house, a woman's face appeared, ghostly pale in the twilight. Her hair, a pale blonde and nearly silver, was tied tightly back, and not a hair out of place. Her face was calm and serene, and she wore a white high-collared blouse, the kind worn from another time, and her gaze was fixed on the ocean, as if though she was waiting for something, for someone. A shiver ran down my spine, and I felt an overwhelming sense of being drawn towards her. All of a sudden, her presence was soft but undeniably real, and it filled the air with a haunting energy, as if we almost felt suspended in time. We stood frozen, and we stared up at her, unable to look away. But as quickly as she appeared, she was gone. The window was empty, the house seemed to exhale, and the air felt colder. My heart was racing, and the weight of that moment was settling in my chest. I turned to my boyfriend, but he too seemed at a loss of words, his gaze still lingering on the house, as if he expected her to return. All of a sudden, we bolted towards the house, hoping to find an answer, an explanation, but the door stood firm against the night. It was locked and it was unyielding, and the wind was howling around us. The house, it seemed, was unwelcoming as it was mysterious. We knocked once, we knocked twice, we tried 3 times, 4 times, trying to make contact, but we were only answered by the hollow sound of our own voices yelling, "Hello?" That night, as we drove away, we couldn't shake the feeling of that woman's face, her gaze that still lingered on us. I could almost hear her. I could almost see her. Right there, so close. We had come for a quiet evening by the sea, but I felt something else had followed us home. Unable to shake the feeling, I spent the next several hours researching the house of refuge, looking for any connection to the woman I had just seen. My search had led me to a name, Susan Corbin Bessie. There she was, right in the photo. That's the woman that we saw. Her and her husband, Hubert, were the keepers of the House of Refuge from the 1840s till 1902. And together they had transformed the house into a simple shelter, into a place of warmth and care for those who had washed ashore. As I read through old accounts, I learned that Susan had been known for her hospitality, her kindness to sailors in need, and that her cooking had even become famous in the area. Some people claimed that on a quiet evening, they would walk past the House of Refuge and even catch a faint whiff of her southern home-fried dishes, even though the kitchen had not been operational in over 75 years. The more that I uncovered, the more that I felt certain
that it was her spirit that I had seen in the window, bound to a place that she had loved, perhaps a silent guardian still watching over the sea.
Our third submission to the Midnight Society takes us deep inside the melodies and mysteries of country music. Told by my very own Uncle Richard, this is the story of the Man in Black.
To quote Noel Coward, I love America. I love its beauty, I love its people, and I love, and I mean really love, country music. I can and have bored anyone stupid enough to stop and listen to me rambling on about the intricacies of the genres and subgenres of this fantastic art form. The essence of country music has always been the story in the song. Now, mostly that story is about love, or more particular, lost love. There is, of course, to quote David Allan Coe, a healthy proportion of songs about mama, or trains, or trucks, or prison, or getting drunk. But sometimes, just sometimes, that story has a more spectral nature to it. From the perennial Ghost Riders in the Sky, covered by many of the luminaries of country, to the, quite frankly, weird Porter Wagoner's Grave, to the surprisingly haunting beaches of Cheyenne, there have always been country songs that have embraced and celebrated the spirit world. But the one song that stands above them all is The Ride, which tells the tale of a drifter hitching from Montgomery to Nashville and is offered a lift by a gaunt stranger in a Cadillac. He drops the would-be star short of Nashville, and at the climax of the song, we find out that the gaunt stranger is none other than the ghost of Hank Williams. The song was written by Hank Williams' obsessive Gary Gentry. Gary struggled to come up with a song that he felt would do his hero justice. Writing into the night and getting more and more frustrated, in desperation, he called out to Hank to show himself. Minutes later, Gentry looked down the long corridor from his home studio to his sitting room, and there, sitting shirtless on his couch, was the very spirit he had summoned. Within half an hour, Gary had The Ride written and a demo recorded. Years later, the aforementioned David Allan Coe performed The Ride at the Grand Ole Opry. And when he got to the line, "You don't have to call me Mr. The whole world calls me Hank," all the lights in the auditorium failed. It is not just the songs of Nashville that cross the divide. The artists themselves have been shown to possess powers of prediction and clairvoyance. Sadly, it would seem that Patsy Cline foresaw her own death. In August of 1962, Patsy showed Loretta Lynn, her friend and protege, a copy of both her first and latest albums with the words, "Look, the first and the last." 7 months later, Patsy died in a plane crash on her way back to Nashville. Surely, though, the interweaving happenings, sightings and premonitions that surround one of country's greats are still to this day the most intriguing. Johnny Cash was considered to be one of the most honest and down-to-earth men in the business, but mixed up in his life and career was a veritable swirl of the supernatural. For starters, Cash owned a house in Jamaica called Cinnamon Hill Great House, which was less than half a mile from Rose Hall, the residence of the notorious Annie Palmer, whose life and times, incidentally, is worthy of an entire episode of The West London Witch by itself. Annie was killed by one of her slaves, and it is said that many a time Johnny Cash and his guests would see the ghost of Annie, the White Witch as she was known, walking through the dining room of Cinnamon Hill Great House. In fact, so familiar was she to Cash that he penned and recorded the song The Ballad of Annie Palmer. However, it was with his friends and associates, Johnny Horton and Merle Kilgore, that things got truly weird. All three shared a belief in the spirit world and would frequently discuss the afterlife. Indeed, they concocted a surefire way of making contact from the afterlife should one of them die. They came up with the phrase, "The drummer is a rummer and he can't hold the beat." This phrase would somehow be communicated from beyond the grave to the other two friends still living. Horton and Kilgore both had a great amount of faith in a medium called Bernard Ricks. One day, out of the blue, Ricks called and spoke to Kilgore's wife, Judy, and told her to check on her young daughter, Kim, who at the time was resting in her room. When Judy checked, her daughter had somehow got her head stuck under the mattress and was suffocating. She was rushed to hospital and fortunately made a full recovery. Sadly, and after predicting his own death, Johnny Horton was killed by a drunk driver in a car crash. At his funeral, Cash, to console his friend Merle Kilgore, said that although the day was cloudy and drizzly, soon, to quote, "a miracle would shine on them, and everything will be bright as day." Also attending the funeral was medium Bernard Ricks, and once the ceremony was finished, Ricks showed Cash a series of sketches and words that had come to him during the service. Amongst these was the phrase, "Bright is this day," echoing Cash's remarks to Kilgore. Some years later, Merle Kilgore found himself in Cincinnati visiting radio presenter and friend Bob Lockwood. Bob invited Merle onto his show, as he was at the time promoting Johnny Cash's latest single, Ring of Fire, which he wrote together with June Carter, Cash's future wife. After a short interview with Merle, Bob received a call to the studio. It was from a lady who was a psychic. The previous evening, she had met with a group of fellow psychics, and during their Ouija board session, the name Merle Kilgore had been spelt out. Cincinnati is not known as a hotbed of country music, so none of those present knew who Merle Kilgore was, until the lady happened to hear him on Bob Lockwood's show. She said she would like to speak to Merle, as she had been given a message for him. And the message? The drummer is a rummer, and he can't hold the beat.
Our final submission to the Midnight Society is a story that has haunted me for 25 years. When I was a child, my elementary school librarian used to tell us stories every Thursday afternoon. One Halloween, my class gathered into the library as Miss Morano shared with us a grim and haunting tale that has truly scarred me for life. For our final story of Season 5, I am pleased to present to you The Licked Hand. As sheets of rain pounded on the window panes, Samantha looked out on a marble sky, illuminated by violent, violet streaks of lightning and explosive crashes of thunder. The gutters swelled with washes of watershed, and the road looked like an icy black river as water streamed down the asphalt in a tidal fashion. The sound was incredible, a symphony of water, wind, crashing thunder, and whipping trees. The scene was biblical and almost exciting, almost exhilarating, almost fun. As Samantha stood at the window, marveling at the ferocity and majesty of the storm, warm, dry, and safe inside her living room, she started to hear the melodic chiming of her cell phone. It was as she had expected. Peter had called to relay the news that she already knew. There was no way he'd be home tonight. The flash flooding was so severe, it wasn't possible for his little Honda Civic to wade home. The pair made jokes about submarines and kayaks before saying, "I love you, stay safe and dry." Peter told Samantha to give their dog an extra hug and a kiss from him. And as the second act of thunder began to lash, the pair hung up. As soon as their call came to a close, an incredible crescendo of sound and light tore through the night sky. With a pop and a buzz, all the lights went out, leaving Samantha and her trusty sheepdog alone in the dark. Purple and silver light spilling into the living room through the window. Without the comforting glow of the lights, the storm took on a sinister feeling. Samantha let her hand fall to her side, and her loyal pup came to give her fingers a comforting lick. In an effort to fill the space with something other than the sound of the storm, Samantha pulled out Peter's old battery-operated radio from the garage. As she brushed her teeth in the dark, she listened to a fuzzy and crackling recording of the Eagles singing about tequila sunrises. She sang along with Van Morrison and gave the shaggy pup a powerful performance of Brown-Eyed Girl. As the nostalgia flowed from the radio, the mood in the house began to soften. Samantha tucked herself into bed, swimming into a warm sea of linen. Her trusty dog on the floor beside her bed. Occasionally, she would drop her left hand down the side and the pup would respond with a reassuring lick. Samantha began to drift to sleep, the melodies of the storm harmonizing with Stevie Nicks. Yet all of a sudden, she was startled awake by an emergency news report.
Coming in live from Bridgeport. Due to the power outage, there has been a breakout from the Bridgeport Psychiatric Facility. A prisoner convicted of murder has escaped and has yet to be located. This man is dangerous, resourceful, violent, and very mentally ill. If you're in the surrounding areas, please check your doors and windows, and whatever you do, do not open up your door for anyone.
Oh, great, Samantha moaned. The facility was only 3 miles from the house. Thank God she had already done her nightly security check. But what about the garage door? She had got the radio after locking up. She dropped her hand, and her fluffy, dutiful sheepdog responded with his customary lick. I'm sure it's fine, Samantha reasoned. She rolled over and snuggled up tight in the blankets as the talking heads explored the internal monologue of a psycho killer, the measured bass line matching the beating rain. At 2 a.m., Samantha awoke to a steady drip, drip emitting from the bathroom. The radio was silent. Perhaps it had run out of batteries. And even though the storm still raged outside, the syrupy, viscous drip, drip, drip of the tap was maddening. Samantha let her hand fall by the bedside and was relieved to feel the familiar lick dance across her fingers. It was too cold and dark to get out of bed. The tap would have to wait. Focusing on the rain outside, Samantha allowed sleep to wash over her once more. Yet at 4 a.m., she was awoken again. The dripping was persisting and was simply impossible to ignore. Frustrated and very much awake, Samantha rolled out of bed to give the tap a tight turn. The bathroom was icy cold and pitch black. She fumbled in the dark and found her way to the pedestal sink. Both taps were off and the porcelain was dry. Feeling along the wall, Samantha pulled back the shower curtain and gave the faucet a strong twist. Yet, still, dripping continued. Too tired to investigate further, Samantha resigned. She closed the bathroom door behind her to muffle the sound and crawled back into bed. She felt a stirring on the floor beside her and whispered an apology to the dog for waking them. She offered her hand as a consolation and received a gentle lick in response. The next morning, Samantha awoke to the blaring sounds of Elvis Costello repeating, "Let him dangle." The radio was on full blast, and the sound was reverberating through her chest, vibrating the bed and shaking the bedroom walls. Frantically, she fumbled with the radio, fingers punching at the standby button. Her heart was racing, and she felt as though her body was divorced from her soul. But as the quiet prevailed over the room, she began to laugh. Rubbing sleep from her eyes, Samantha made her way to the bathroom. Instinctively, her hand swiped over the light switch, and white light flooded the ceramic space. The electricity was back on. As Samantha stepped into the bathroom, she was hit by the metallic scent of copper, and the dripping sound was still pattering from within the shower. Samantha closed her fingers on the shower curtain and pulled back the cloth to investigate. But instead of a leaky shower head, there, strung up from the nozzle, was her beloved dog. His neck split open and blood steadily spilling into the shower pan. Drip, drip, drip. Horrified, Samantha pulled the curtain closed. As she turned to run out of the bathroom, her eyes fell on the mirror. There in blood, scrawled across the silver surface, read the horrifying message: "Men can lick fingers too." This concludes this evening's submissions to the Midnight Society and Season 5 of The West London Witch. From the bottom of my spooky little heart, I truly cannot thank you all enough for your continued love and support that you have all shown to the podcast this season. To all of our storytellers, thank you so much for entrusting me to share your tales with the respect and sensitivity they deserve. I feel so very honored to be able to feature your stories on our platform. To our beautiful, generous patrons, your continued belief and investment in this show is truly touching. There will never be enough words to accurately express how thankful I am for you all. I cannot wait to spend the summer with you as we embark on our second summer reading program. And lastly, a huge, massive, gargantuan thank you to my dear friend and our very own sound magician, Danny. This show would be nothing without the time, talent, and expertise you devote to every single episode. I simply cannot believe that we have completed 5 seasons of this spooky journey together. Although this is our final episode of Season 5, Season 6 will go live in a few short months. However, if you want to spend the summer with me here at Cobweb Cottage, please do come and join us on Patreon. It's easy, affordable, and we will be busy all summer long diving into the dark halls of 112 Ocean Avenue. Join us at patreon.com/The West London Witch. And until next season, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Do you have a spooky story you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Drop me an email at thewestlondonwitch@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at The West London Witch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And come and follow us for additional content on Instagram and Facebook. The West London Witch is created by me, Rebecca Strazina. Our sound designer and production magician is the incredible Danny Cross. Our theme music was bespokely written and performed by the wickedly talented Kyle Hall. Our cover art is the beautiful collaboration between Lizzie Wilson and Jake Bowser. Special thanks to Miss Sinead Bowers, our quality control and biggest cheerleader. And thank you to you, all of our listeners all over the world. These are your stories. Thank you for sharing them with us.